Dear friends, today let us talk about the spiritual conversation. In fact, when we look at the spiritual conversation, we see from the example of Jesus. Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. You will find in Luke chapter 10. In the in the Constitution of the Society of Jesus, number 684, it says, endeavor to be profitable to individuals by spiritual conversations, by counseling and exhorting to good works, and by conducting spiritual exercises. In the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola, number 335, it says, the good angel touches the soul gently, lightly, and sweetly, like a drop of water going into a sponge. The above mentioned three texts introduce sacred listening, spiritual conversation, and discernment of spirits. These lie at the heart of spiritual conversation. Both speakers and listeners seek to understand how God is at work in their daily life. It's not about teaching, proselytizing, or counseling. For Ignatius, the spirit of such conversation is clear. Be slow to speak, listen quietly, treat others as equals, be humble and sincere, speak with kindness and love, and see the Trinity is at work in all. Spiritual conversation focuses on the quality of one's capacity to listen as well as the quality of the words spoken. This means paying attention to the spiritual movement in oneself and in the other person during a conversation, which requires being attentive to more than simply words expressed. This quality of attention is an act of respecting, welcoming, and being hospitable to others as they are. It's an approach that takes seriously what happens in the hearts of those who are conversing. There are two necessary attitudes that are fundamental to this process. One is listening and speaking from the heart. The aim of spiritual conversation is to create an atmosphere of trust and welcome so that people can express themselves more freely. This helps them to take seriously what happens within them as they listen to others and speak. Ultimately, this interior attentiveness makes us more aware of the presence and participation of the Holy Spirit in the process of sharing and discernment. The focus of spiritual conversation is on the person to whom we are listening, on ourselves, and what we are experiencing at the spiritual level. The fundamental question is, what's happening in the other person and in me? And how is the Lord working here? There are certain steps to follow. For example, active listening is so important in spiritual conversation. Through active listening, the goal is to try and understand others as they are. We listen not only to what the other person says, but also to what he or she means and what he or she might be experiencing on a deeper level. This means listening with a heart that is open and receptive. This way of listening is active because it involves paying attention to more than one level of expression of the other. In order to do so, one must participate actively in the listening process. We listen to the other while he or she is speaking and do not focus on what we are going to say afterwards. We welcome without judgment what the other person says, no matter what we think about the person or what they have said. Each person is an expert on his or her own life. We must listen in a way that is more disposed to giving a good interpretation, as St. Ignatius of Loyola says in his spiritual exercises, give a good interpretation to what the other says than condemning it as false. You can see spiritual exercises number 22. We must believe that the Holy Spirit speaks to us through the other person. Welcoming without prejudice is a deep way of welcoming the other in his or her radical uniqueness. Each one is unique. Active listening is letting oneself be influenced by the other and learning from the other. Active listening is demanding because it requires humility. It requires openness, patience, and involvement. But it is an effective way of taking others seriously. That's about active listening. But there is also another thing, which is speaking from the heart, or we call it intentional speaking. This means sincerely expressing oneself, one's experience, one's sentiments and thoughts. It involves speaking to one's own experience and what one truly thinks and feels. We take responsibility not only for what we say, but also for what we feel. We do not blame others for what we feel. We share the truth as we see it and as we live it, but do not impose it. Speaking from the heart is offering a generous gift to the other in return for being actively listened to. This process is greatly enriched by a regular personal practice of prayerful self-examining. Without a habit of discernment and knowledge of oneself and how God is present in one's life, one cannot actively listen or speak from the heart. In summary, what are the desired attitudes for spiritual conversation? If someone asks, what are the attitudes for spiritual conversation needed? We can say, listen actively and attentively. Listen to others without judgment. No prejudice, no prejudgment. Pay attention not only to the words, but also to the tone and feelings of the one who is speaking. Avoid the temptation of using the time to prepare for what you will say instead of listening. Speak intentionally. Express your experience, thoughts, and feelings as clearly as you can. Listen actively to yourself, mindful of your own thoughts and feelings as you speak. Monitor possible tendencies to be self-centered while speaking. Now, there are certain basic steps we can take for spiritual conversation in a community meetings or in a conference, etc., in our larger meetings. First of all, we need time, at least 2 hours for a discernment meeting like this. We need to prepare. Preparation, I mean, before coming to the group meeting, participants carry out a time of personal prayer and reflection over a question at hand. Usually, some background information as well as some points and questions for prayer are provided. An adequate time of about 30 to 1 hour, 30 minutes to 1 hour can be set aside for this. It's a very important process. At the end of the prayer period, participants take stock of the fruits of the prayer and decide what they will share with the group. That's the first step. The second step is gathering. Ideally, each group can comprise about 6 to 8 persons. A facilitator is appointed for the group meeting, and he or she welcomes all the participants in the group. An opening prayer is said, and each person may share 1 or 2 words that describe his or her interior state at that moment. The facilitator may also briefly recap the sentence of steps as below. Usually, volunteers are also requested for note-taking and timekeeping. The first round is like this. Each person takes turns to share about what happened during the personal prayer time and shares the fruits of his or her prayer. Everyone is given the same amount of time to speak. That's around 2 or 3 minutes. The focus is to listen to one another rather than simply think about what one wants to say. Participants are invited to open their hearts and minds to listen to one another and be attentive to how the Spirit is moving. Between each person, the group may take a brief pause to absorb what was said. During this round, there are no discussions or interactions between participants except to ask for clarification about a word or a phrase if necessary only. The next step is silence. A time of silence is observed during which participants attend to how they have been moved during the first round, what struck them as they listened, and what were the notable points of consolation or desolation, if any. The second round, that's the fifth step, is participants share what emerged within them during the time of silence. No one is obliged to speak, and participants can share spontaneously without any particular order. This is not a time for discussing or refuting what someone else says, nor for bringing up what participants forgot to mention in the first round. It's not a cognitive or intellectual discussion at this stage. Rather, is an opportunity to respond to questions like, how was I affected by what I heard? Is there a common thread in what was shared? Is there something missing that I had expected would be said? Was I especially touched by a particular sharing? Have I received any particular insight or revelation? What is it? Where did I experience a sense of harmony with others as we share with one another? The second round enables the group to realize what unites them. It is here that signs of the action of the Holy Spirit in the group begin to manifest themselves, and the conversation becomes an experience of shared discernment. So, the sixth stage of the spiritual conversation is we can spend another short time as silence, just to note that the participants were moved during the second round, and particularly what key points seem to be emerging in the group. And the third round is, the third step is, that is, participants share what emerged from the preceding time of silence. They may also take note of the ways which the Holy Spirit may be moving the group. A prayer of thanksgiving can conclude the conversation. After that, the eighth stage, that is the last one, is the review and report. Finally, the group can briefly review and reflect on how the conversation proceeded and decide on the main points they will report from the conversation. And this whole process can conclude with a short prayer together as a group, so that people experience in the spiritual atmosphere how the Spirit led each one of them. Mind you, in the process of spiritual conversation, there is everyone is equal. There is no difference between senior or junior, or aged or young. Everyone has unique experience and unique opinions. Our capacity to listen and speak what is inside of us, recognizing the feelings, gives us better clarity, better harmony, and better results in a meeting. I think we need to take it seriously, and in our communitarian discernment, etc., we must use spiritual conversation as a process to make decisions. If we follow, we will be better in quality, and we will be really spiritual in decision making. Let's follow spiritual conversation as our process, our method in decision making. Thank you very much, and God bless all of you.